So you're headed back to training. Are you ready for the things that you probably haven't done since the last time? Let's get up to speed with this great piece from our very own Neil Singer. Ready for Recurrent 2.0. Neil?
I'm here in the CJ3 simulator at Flight Safety Textron Aviation Training. We're going to fly a few more maneuvers you might encounter during your next Recurrent. So, navigating to the SWR VOR here, I start seeing some yellow messages pop up here. I have a terrain failure. The terrain system is dependent on GPS position, and I have a message. When I check my message, I see GNSS not available. GNSS just being a generic term for satellite navigation. So I know something's wrong with my GPS, and I expect that pretty soon I'm probably going to see this message, FMS-DR, dead reckoning, meaning that the system is now coasting using its last known position, headings and speeds, but we're not really getting any accurate navigation. So I want to restore positive navigation now. So I was navigating directly to the SWR VOR. Before I switch my mode on my HSI, I'm going to switch to heading mode real quickly. This is one good reason to always fly with your heading bug more or less synced up so that you can always switch into heading mode. Airplane's not going to do anything drastically different than it was doing. Because as soon as I switch to green needles, if I was in nav mode, the system's going to switch to roll mode. It doesn't like the source being changed while it's trying to navigate on the autopilot that way. Now I'm in green needles. I can go back to my legs page. As a shortcut, I can just copy the VOR name down into the scratch pad, go to my tune, paste it on top of nav1. I don't have to pull out a chart, look up the frequency. This is now my active VHF source. I can ascertain my course directly to the VOR the old-fashioned way by twisting the HSI needle until I have a 2 indication and a centered needle. Good news is there's a shortcut. I can also just press the course selector knob straight down and the system will do the work for me of figuring out what is the course directly to my station. With the needle centered with a 2 indication, I can reselect nav. I'm expecting to see VOR1, and now the autopilot is tracking this raw VHF signal. I have my distance to the station coming from the ground-based DME source right here. I do want to make sure I don't see DME hold on. This button here would let me hold the DME source from one VHF station while I'm actually navigating to a different one. For example, if an ILS doesn't have DME associated with it. But in this case, I want that off because I want whatever I'm navigating to be the station that displays DME information. For a nose-high unusual attitude recovery, there's a couple key points. If we find ourselves very nose high, we don't want to simply shove the nose down because we'll put the airplane into a low or even negative G situation, which jets really don't like. So we're going to make sure we're in a fairly steep bank, 45, 60 degrees. Think about slicing down towards the horizon in that bank. Come out of the bank as we're approaching the horizon. The other thing I consistently see pilots forget is the throttle. They get so fixated on fixing the attitude that the speed is decaying as they're bringing the nose down. We're unloading the airplane in a lower G situation. The stall speed is going to decrease as we unload, but as soon as we reload, approaching the horizon, stall speed is going to return to its normal 1G situation, and if we haven't added some throttle, we might be finding ourselves right on the edge of a stall. So we want to be adding throttle as we're pitching down, even if it looks like our airspeed is okay at the moment. So I find myself extremely high nose up, full throttle, establishing a 50, 60 degree bank, holding that bank angle as I push the nose back to the horizon, minimizing the negative G situation, approaching the 0 pitch reference point. I can start to come out of that bank and then reestablishing level flight, being very mindful of where my airspeed is. Maybe descending for a bit if I need to pick up a little bit more airspeed so I don't enter a stall as I recover. I find myself in nose low. The most important thing is throttles to idle, speed brakes extended, and 0 bank before I start the pull out. I do not want to excessively load up this airplane. In a simulator, we can't feel the G load, of course, so we're just going to approximate a moderate pull, trying to keep our G load under our airframe limit. As we approach the zero pitch line, we can take a look where our speed is, adjust speed brakes and throttles as necessary. So here we are sitting about 5 miles outside the final approach fix on the ILS 27 Circle 18 right at Memphis, everybody's favorite circle to land approach that we do all the time at Flight Safety. And we're just gonna walk through a circle to land approach and some tips and tricks and gotchas that we see a lot. A couple things. Pilots tend to consistently end up a little bit high on final, much more likely to end up a little high than a little low. So we're going to talk through some ways we can avoid that. Pilots tend to end up overshooting final. So we're going to talk about thinking through that logic and how to make sure we avoid that as well. A couple key points. When we come off a freeze here, we're already configured for the circle to land. In the CJ3, that's gear down, flaps at the approach setting. We're going to be slowing to a speed of V approach plus 10. I've set my VT to V approach plus 10 because another thing I see pilots have a consistent problem with is holding that speed precisely during the circle. They get too fast, they get too slow, and we really want to be right on that airspeed as we're maneuvering.
Citation 525 Mike Romeo, clear for the ILS 27, expect circle 18 right.
Clear for the ILS 27, circle 18 right. Important point, we're flying
Altitude.
circle to land approaches in nav mode, not approach mode. We don't want the autopilot to capture a glide slope, descend through our MDA. Every circle to land is a non-precision approach. It specifies we are flying this to an MDA, not to descend below that altitude. On my MFD, I've set up my range rings and my extended final. We have the 2.7 mile extended circling area on this approach, which makes the maneuver a lot more relaxed and comfortable. Right now, I'm just stable. Gears down, flaps 15. I'm at my V approach plus 10. I'm approaching my final approach fix with my altitude selector set to my MDA, waiting.
Citation 525 Mike Romeo, contact Memphis Tower 119.7.
Tower 19.7. Memphis Tower, citation 525 Mike Romeo, outside Claiborne.
Citation 525 Mike Romeo, report the field in sight for landing clearance.
Port field in sight, 725 Mike Romeo. Approaching the final approach fix. Going to select vertical speed and 1,000 feet per minute. This is one time we're trying to make a continuous descent on final that mimics a 3-degree glide path might not be advisable. The sooner we get down to our MDA, the sooner we can reset our altitude selector for the mist. We can get our power setting set to hold our target airspeed. We can start visually trying to look for the airport. This is one time we're getting down to MDA a little bit earlier is advisable, and certainly 1,000 foot per minute approach inside the final approach fix is considered stabilized as entirely safe and acceptable. My airspeed is gaining a little bit over my target of V approach plus 10. Throttles are at idle. It's not so much that I feel like it's necessary to extend the speed brakes, but if it did get much faster, I might consider that. Okay, breaking out of the clouds, I see the runway at 12 o'clock ahead. Memphis Tower, citation 525 Mike Romeo, has airport in sight.
Citation 525 Mike Romeo, circle north of the field at pilot discretion, enter left base, clear to land 18 right.
Circle 4, left traffic, and clear to land 18 right. So here I am. I'm just hitting my 2.7 mile range ring, showing me my protected area. The airport's in sight. I'm stable at MDA. This is a great time to start my turn. If I can maneuver inside the protected airspace, but use as much of it as I can, it's going to be a much more calm, relaxed procedure. A good circle to land should feel unhurried, very deliberate and methodical. As I start my turn, I can reset my altitude selector to my missed approach altitude of 5,000 feet. And I can adjust my thrust as necessary, trying to hold my V approach plus 10. Remembering that pilots tend to overshoot final and tend to end up too high, I can maneuver to the full extent of this protected area. This is, again, just going to make the procedure a little more calm. It's going to give me a little more time to assess how I'm doing laterally and vertically. Of course, I do have to keep my field in sight, but as long as I'm inside my 2.7 and at my appropriate MDA for my category, I do have obstacle clearance assured. good circle to land approach should feel calm, deliberate, shouldn't feel rushed. Common mistake people will make is click off the autopilot, select flaps to the landing position, immediately the plane's going to balloon up. What they want to be doing is coming down. So what I can do is when I feel like it's about the right time, I can spin my heading bug around to match the landing runway, click the autopilot off, select vertical speed down 500 feet a minute. Now my autopilot, or in this case my flight director, is going to be helping me out here. So as long as I'm tracking my flight director, then I know I'm going to be maintaining a descent, and that will help me avoid that ballooning. Now my flight director just wants me to turn to the landing runway heading. I might say, you know, I can roll out for a second here, I can shallow the turn out, but the flight director is always biasing me to continue turning and to continue descending so as to avoid those common mistakes of overshooting or ending up high. And again, a good circle to land is relaxed. If I realize I turned a little earlier than I needed to, it's a lot easier to make a shallow turn onto final than it is to try to re-intercept the final from the other side. Likewise, if I realize I ended up maybe a touch lower than I want to be, it's a lot easier to level off momentarily than it is to try to slow down and descend at the same time. As I'm established wings level on final, I can slow to my ref speed. Wanted to be holding VREF plus 10 through that turn for the extra margin of stall protection. And of course, the key to a good landing is a good approach and good setup. With time to plan the approach, you should have no trouble touching down at the touchdown point on speed.
These tips make simulator training even more beneficial. For more safety information, check out our free material at citationjetpilots.com. Click on the Safety tab. Fly safe, and we'll see you next time.